Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian. Now, multinational tech cash. Are we addicted? And if so, how badly? We've always had a lot of eggs in the multinational basket, but it was supposed to be seen as a route to economic recovery and jobs creation while we caught up with other industrialised countries. Now the Irish Fiscal Advisory Council is saying we might be hooked in quite a dangerous way. It says we don't make enough ourselves to support our costs, and that the underlying deficit, which means the shortfall in what we actually make from our own businesses versus what we spend on things like roads, hospitals and schools and everything else, has risen from 6 billion euro to 14 billion euro in just 2 years. And that 14 billion euro, or 13.6 billion euro, was before we dredged up the 750 million to placate fuel protesters and before any tax cuts or public pay rises this year, which seem to be promised in the budget or certainly part of the conversation nationally. Just a reminder that the Irish Fiscal Advisory Council also says that 3 companies, just 3, Apple, Microsoft and Eli Lilly, between them now pay 46% of Ireland's entire corporate tax bill. So the question is anyone getting a little worried about this? Well, joining me to discuss this are Joe Haslam, Executive Director of the Owners Scaleup Program at IE Business School in Madrid, Spain, which is one of the top 10 business schools in Europe, and Barry Ward, a barrister and Fine Gael TD for Dún Laoghaire. Joe, I'm going to start with you first because I've actually debated this with you before, and I've been the one in the past to argue the establishment line, to say that multinational tech firms aren't necessarily, all that bad, that they serve a purpose, they're a means to an end economically. And I'm not going to say now that you were right and I was wrong, but it looks like we are perilously dependent on these multinationals, or at least a few of them, for things like roads, schools and hospitals, and that our own industry may not be able to fill that gap at the moment. But there doesn't seem to be anyone really all that worried about it. How do you think about this now?
Well, Adrian, the difference, of course, is that I can speak from Madrid, so I can speak much more independently. Almost everyone I speak to, and Ireland is a small country, so I went to school with people who are in the Dáil, and they say one thing in private and they say one thing in public, and I can understand why, from their position, that they don't want to be associated with it when it all comes down. There's a tendency to shoot the messenger in Ireland. And, FDI has been, I've often compared it to the Pakistan attitude to nuclear weapons. It's basically like it's a non-negotiable. No Pakistani will ever say that, we should, not have a nuclear deterrent. Instead, we should feed the people. And that's the sort of the situation where we are. And then of course, I come across saying things sounding like Nigel Farage by saying things like take back control. But it's undeniable that when you don't have control, when you're at the whim of a decision being made in a boardroom in California, that's not a place we should be, especially when we have the option. The first part of the Celtic Tiger was a good story for Ireland. In other words, that for a while we actually did very well. Following the Telesis report, the Culleton report, we created a lot of SMEs who exported. And that story worked very well for a while. And then we perhaps got more expensive, wages went up. And then we just sort of lost that story, doubled down on the multinationals and perhaps used property to get growth. So my argument is that we're not as far away from it as you might think. But ultimately, Irish people can create jobs too.
Okay, Barry, we can all understand how we got here. The money from these companies literally kept the lights on during COVID in many instances. And maybe you could say that the only reason we can launch some of the multi-billion euro infrastructure projects in a way that we couldn't before. But is there not a feeling here, just from TD's perspective and somebody within the government parties, is there any kind of sense that we might be living beyond our means here?
There is. And we've got to be very careful about that. I always think of that old story they tell about Walmart selling washing machines in their stores all across America. So they go to a washing machine company that manufactures them and says, look, we'll buy X number of washing machines from you. And then they come back the next year and go, we really like your stuff. We're going to buy all of your outputs. This is a company that's making 10,000 machines a year, and they come back a year later and they go, actually, we need 20,000 next year. So the company is fantastic, got all this guaranteed output, so they invest in extra machinery, manpower, expand the factory. Now they're making 20,000 machines a year, and it goes up again. And then 5-6 years down the road, Walmart come back and goes, actually, we will buy 20,000 from you, but we want them at half price. And now the company's in real difficulty because it's totally dependent on Walmart for all of its market and all the expansion, all the cost that comes with that.
Are you making any comparison?
I was going to say the danger would be if there was one tech company, for example, that on which we were hugely dependent. That would be the same.
Well, there are two that we are: Apple and Microsoft.
There are. I mean, yes. There's 3 companies you can point to that make up 46% of our corporate tax take. So, firstly, that's less than half of corporation tax. Yep. There are, of course, lots of other tax streams.
13 billion a year.
Yeah, and there's lots of other tax streams the state benefits from, and the annual budget is far in excess of that. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be concerned, but we have actually diversified. So there is a diverse range of tech companies in Ireland. There's a diverse range of pharma companies, and we still have.
Do you mean multinationals now, or
multinationals specifically? Okay. But even if you look at the business environment and the tax-paying corporate environment in Ireland, the vast majority of people in this country are still employed by SMEs, not by large FDI or multinational companies. So I agree that there is a cause for concern, there's a cause for caution, and there's a cause for increasing both innovation and diversification. But I would not be concerned that there's a cliff edge coming, or even if there is, that's the end of Ireland Inc. There's still lots within the economy to give us succor in terms of the future of the economy, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't be preparing.
So, because we have an awful lot of pressure now at the moment from both left, centre, centre right, and right. Cut taxes here, raise spending here, public pay rises. A lot of different constituencies. There seems to be consensus, from what I can see around the country, that we're going to have to cut taxes and spend more money. Now, with the Irish Fiscal Council, with that sort of entire analysis of the underlying deficit going up, like how you're a TD, you have to talk, you have to answer to people. How do you hold the line against that?
Well, the first thing is, first and foremost, has to be the balancing of the budget. You can't have a situation where you're spending more money than you're taking in.
But the whole point is that the underlying deficit has gone from 6 billion to 13 billion in the last 2 years. It looks like it could go up even further if we keep spending and keep relying on these windfall taxes.
Not as a function of the whole budget. If you're looking only at one section of the tax take, you can make that argument. And as I say, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be careful. But at the end of the day, we still have balanced books. We're the fastest growing economy in Europe. And I wouldn't do down the fact that FDI has been a major part of that. It's not the only part of it. And the lesson for us now is that in order to prepare for or rather to avoid the situation where we're continuing to be dependent on corporation tax from foreign companies, we need to diversify, but we also need to foster innovation. And if you look at the presidency that's coming up with the European Union, one of Ireland's big priorities is going to be improving competitiveness, cutting red tape, cutting bureaucracy, allowing indigenous companies to grow and grow and grow. And that is happening in Ireland, but we need to accelerate that process to protect ourselves long term.
Joe, how do they do it in Spain? Because obviously different setup to Ireland, probably had better infrastructure to begin with, maybe not as rich or as advanced as Germany or France, 40 years ago, but still probably in a better position, certainly around the cities, than Ireland. But how has Spain done it, and what is the difference in the attitude there compared to Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to note is Ireland, Spain doesn't even really have an IDA. I mean, it almost seems incredible to think about it, but they don't really have an IDA, and they don't look to Ireland. And I'm in many rooms. I've been here for 25 years, so I'm in rooms when they're talking about Ireland, not knowing there's an Irish person in the room, and no, there's nobody saying anything good about Ireland. What happened is they don't so much think, maybe we should do that. They ask, like, why are you doing that? Why would you favor non-Irish people over Irish people?
Well, in fairness, surely the evidence is there. They've put something like almost 100 billion euro into our coffers over the last decade. An astonishing amount of money for a country like Ireland. That has literally enabled us to do a whole load of projects without there being indigenous companies to step in and doing that. So isn't it as simple as that?
Well, we the point is they get a great deal from Ireland, and the part I don't like is that I'm also in the rooms with these companies, and they're kind of laughing at Ireland. They don't. It's not that they kind of they're like, why would they do it?
When
Why
you say
would
they're
they?
laughing at Ireland, what do you mean by that?
Because they kind of think that they why would a country, I mean, it's almost, no, I do not absolutely believe that Ireland is corrupt. I am not in any sense making that allegation, and people like Barry works hard and does a job that I'm not prepared to do. But it's almost as if we do things that corrupt people would do, but we don't ask for the money, for the payoff.
But
Like
is the paying off, is not that, like, I'm saying that there's almost 100 billion that have gone into our coffers. That is literally schools, hospitals, roads, public pay, etc. Is it not as simple as they come in, we give them a tax rate, they employ people, and we get massive tax, and that literally pays for stuff in Ireland?
But it crowds out our own business. Like
Yeah.
Ireland is a rich country, but it's not a wealthy country. If Ireland was a wealthy country, Dublin would look a lot better than it does. I understood that as if I lived in Ireland, I'd probably say exactly what Barry is saying, and I wouldn't have changed my attitude. And I know Barry has lived in France, so he knows some of this. But what is interesting is that we want to create wealth, not to be rich. Like Ireland is rich because of people, and Barry is correct in saying that the vast majority of companies are SMEs. That FDI receives disproportional attention. But what the issue is to create wealth. We want people like Intercom. We want people like Iona. But we want those companies.
Tynes and these other
Yeah, I
companies,
mean,
yeah.
but even Tynes isn't really a profitable company.
Yeah.
It is one example of a spin-off. But when was the last Irish company that was on the stock exchange? The Ryans, have created great wealth. I mean, the miracle of Michael O'Leary is where are all the other Michael O'Learys? He didn't come out of they're out there, but for somehow they just haven't been able to use the talents that they have.
So do you associate that with being overcrowded by FDI and by big multinationals?
Yeah,
Do you think competition for talent?
they come in and they hoover. Like the best people in Spain do not go and work for Google and Microsoft and those people. They work for Spanish companies. They work for Repsol and they work for Iberdrola and they work for Inditex and they work for those are the companies they want to work for, So, if you're coming out of Trinity, and you have the job to go to Facebook, with the free food and all of that, or go to work, if you're trying to hire people, talk to like Ray Nolan or any of these guys, and he'll tell you how hard it is to attract the best people coming from. I mean, the Paddy Power book actually is really good in that respect about how they managed to attract people. And there's another Indigenous Irish story started, with 4 million, and they managed to kind of target the misfits and those kind of guys. But we need more of those kind of stories, and they then create wealth. That's sort of what I'm trying to do.
Maybe the culture as well. But Barry, at a recent Microsoft Data Center event that I was at, I asked the IDA boss, Michael Lowen, how he felt about the agency's pipeline. Standard question that we ask as journalists coming into the country. He said he felt good about it. And then soon after that, both Anthropic and OpenAI announced or signalled expansion plans, hundreds of jobs, bigger corporate footprints here. Harvey AI is another AI company in here. Also, significant enough announcements by the likes of Apple, Infineon, HubSpot as well. Google, which has gone completely under the radar, increased the number of staff in Dublin from 5,000 to 6,000 over the last 12 months. I only found that out recently. That's obviously comes at the time when a lot of the companies are cutting jobs as well. But my point is that Ireland is doubling down, it seems, on the next wave of tech super giants. So the AI giants, for example, the big AI companies that may at some point become as big as Apple or Microsoft, particularly if a few of them IPO this year. And maybe then they will give us windfall taxes again. And that seems to be now the next stage of our strategy. Is that the only way we know how to survive?
No, and I don't think that's true either. I was just listening to what Joe was saying about companies laughing at Ireland. Why would we give them all these things? I don't think Ireland is giving them anything. Like you talk about 100 billion in the context of corporation tax, but that discounts the income tax that all their executives and all their employees are paying. It discounts the VAT that they're paying in our shops. It discounts all the money they're spending within our economy.
Is that, and forgive me for putting
No,
it this way, is that not a kind of a low-level developing
it
country
absolutely
way
is.
of thinking about
But the
things?
point that I was going to make is, of those people, like Joe says, all the best people are going to work for Google. I don't accept that at all. And actually, if you look at the people who are going to work for Google, Meta, whoever, more than 50% of them are not Irish, for starters. And there are lots of really high quality Irish graduates going into other industries. They're setting up on their own. I mean, in Dún Laoghaire, for example, we have a real hotbed of SME tech, small startups in Dún Laoghaire, in basements and in small offices and things like that. And they will become bigger and bigger and bigger. Yes, we need to foster that. But if the IDA model is so wrong, why are so many countries in Europe trying to emulate it? Why are they coming here and asking us about how the IDA works and trying to do exactly the same thing in their own countries? And it's probably not fair. And Joe's right, I did live in France. And when you look at countries like France, the Netherlands, Spain, these kind of post-imperial countries where there is huge generational wealth, it's not a fair comparison, because they may well laugh at us if they want to do that when they've got lots of investments and shares and all the rest. And by the way, many of them are invested in the very companies that they think are laughing at us. We don't have that generational wealth yet, but it is coming. And the way we build it up is by allowing the people within this country to build those businesses. But what's also important is that if the Googles were not in Ireland, let's say they were in Spain and Meta were in Spain and Apple were in Spain, you'd still have Irish people going to work for them over there. And we would lose all of the revenue that comes with that, all of the expertise, all of the other benefits of having those companies. And the other thing that we're overlooking is that there is also a regulatory aspect to it. As we look now towards AI and towards particularly social media towards children, the Commission Man, the Data Protection Regulator, the Data Protection Commissioner, they all have a huge role in protecting the whole of Europe from the worst abuses of those companies across the European Union. So we have an opportunity also to play a role at that level, and that shouldn't be overlooked either.
Okay, so and just on the regulatory thing, because I've spent a bit of time on this recently, do you think that we've hit the right note on that? Do you think we're often accused of being too soft on tech? Are we too harsh? Are we about right, or are we too soft?
I'd like to see us being harder. I think we haven't hit the right note yet. What's most important is from a legislative perspective, we have put in place the powers for the relevant regulators to do that. But I still think we have more to do, particularly in terms of data protection, but more so the regulation of AI and what it can and can't do, and particularly in protecting children. We do have more work to do.
Very interesting on that, because I was at a conference last week. Dale Sunderland, DPC Commissioner, was saying we need more resources, otherwise we're going to end up in 10 years' time in the same position as we are now when we were underfunded a decade ago. But then you had Michael McGrath, Commissioner, coming on 10 minutes later and putting the other point of view, which I often hear on this podcast, in fairness, which is to say that regulation is strangulating innovation, that we need to be more pragmatic about it and soften it if we want Irish business to grow. You're saying that you agree with Sunderland.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive positions. You can have strong regulation that isn't stifling innovation. So what strong regulation is about is protecting citizens from the might that comes with these enormous corporate behemoths. That's important. And nobody should, in the same way that we're at the, not even at the dawn, we're already into the morning of a massive new wave of technology. And in the same way, for example, that companies in the past were allowed to harness that and then control it, and then retrospectively trying to regulate them. Take cigarettes, for example. It was too late. Once they had the grip, they fought and fought and fought against basic regulation that protected citizens. We cannot let it get to that stage. And I'm worried that we're on the cusp of that point where the AI companies and already the social media companies have so much power and so much control that it's going to be difficult to rein them in. And yet nobody in Europe, no legislator, colleague I've spoken to across Europe, no citizen I've spoken to anywhere in the European Union believes, for example, that the likes of Grok should be able to produce images that are essentially child sexual abuse material. Nobody thinks that. So why are we not shutting that down and making sure that kind of thing isn't allowed to happen? Now, the law says it isn't, but the regulation needs to go further and ensure that it isn't.
It's interesting. I wish I had more time to talk to you about on that point. But Joe, just to bring it back to the multinational tech companies, here. Barry makes an interesting point about the AI companies. Most of them have now chosen Dublin as their regulatory hub. They're starting to grow. Anthropic just announced 200 new jobs. It's paying very, very well, over 200 grand for engineers here. We're going to regulate them here. Some of them might IPO this year, which means they're going to grow again. And do we want to be the ones to give up that business and being the home for those companies as they grow?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I'm glad to hear what Barry said. I agree with very much what he said about stifling innovation. So, at least in that, we might disagree about FDI, but we do agree in that respect. What are we going to do about, I don't know, the OpenAI could turn out to be the next Netscape. That's the problem with making the big bet on that. I can't predict the future any more than anyone can. I mean, every day seems to bring something new. My issue is that I have a whole pile of entrepreneurs who would love to create companies and can't get funding, can't get support. And that's kind of what I want to talk about.
The particular thing,
I get the feeling, Adrian, that the political establishment is more responsive for understandable reasons, but that's not the case in Spain. Going back to what you said, where they don't bow down in front of them, and sometimes I would have people who would come directly from Ireland to Spain. In other words, then they would literally say, like, I wish Spain was more responsive. I was as responsive to us as Ireland is. But Amazon did a huge deal for wind in Aragon, and about 30 billion in investment, and the deal was literally, we're here you come, rule of law, euro, our natural resources and things like that. But there wasn't it wasn't talked about in the way that deal would have been talked about in Ireland. It was just seen as, you're welcome, and when are you going to start paying tax, lads? That was kind of the attitude.
Yeah. A postscript on the AI thing, though, with the AI companies, because it's such a massively funded basis for which those companies exist, we don't realistically, do we, have a possibility, a chance of growing our own indigenous AI companies along those lines? I mean, Mistral would be the biggest European champion, maybe, you might argue. And, it has had to pivot several times, and it's not in the same league as those big companies.
I don't know. I came up to the GAA and I always thought about, all these no one wants to talk about, the ban and Rule 40 and all this kind of stuff, but that's how they protected themselves. And no one likes to talk about protection, and the companies themselves are very, they fight really hard against it for obvious reasons, in the same way that billionaires fight against tax. But the idea that you wouldn't protect your own industry, that's how they grew in Korea, that's how they grew in China, that's how they grew in other countries. But of course, we have no kind of alternative. We would have to go through a very difficult period. And I don't think I could see, when you have to face the electorate of, I think it's Dún Laoghaire every 5 years, how...
See, how do you do that? If it's 13 billion in, windfall taxes a year, how do you
a lot of solicitors live very well from the likes of Facebook and Google in Dún Laoghaire, and I'm sure they wouldn't be, giving Barry their...
Well, Barry's a barrister, in fairness, so wouldn't be sullying him with the...
You don't have to throw the baby out of the bathwater. Regulation doesn't drive the companies out of Ireland. There is this assumption that if you stand up and say, actually, no, it's not permissible to do that they're all going to leave. There's two things about that. First is they have already invested enormous amounts of money in this jurisdiction and in their infrastructure here. And that, companies like that don't turn on a sixpence and say, right, we're going to dump all that and move to Spain or move to some low tax economy somewhere else or something like that. But the other thing is, and I'm killed saying this to our European colleagues, the FDI investment level in Ireland is not just down to tax. It's down to the workforce. It's down to the stability of the political environment. It's down to the climate even. It's down to all of the advantages that come with living in an English language jurisdiction with a common law court system. These are all factors that come together to make it a very attractive place for those companies.
And look, all of those are well-argued points. That where we started out at the top of this podcast are, all of that notwithstanding, are we so chronically addicted to them being our employers and being our paymasters that we no longer now have an alternative strategy to pay for the things that we need ourselves?
I don't think so, because as I say, they're only one strand of the tax stick in Ireland. They're a big one and an important one, no doubt about it. I think the question is more so, are we so chronically addictive that we aren't willing to talk truth to them? That's a much bigger issue. Are we willing to say to them, well, you have to do this to stay here, or you can't do that to stay here? I don't think we're at that point. I think the government is upfront with them, but that relationship has to be managed as well.
We've got the presidency of the EU now coming up, second half of the year. Ireland's reputation, our brand is as a bridge between the US and Europe. That is the way we've positioned ourselves. We took Apple's side in the European Commission case. We did.
We took revenue side in terms of it. The revenue did what they believed was the right thing to do. The Department of Finance couldn't do otherwise.
Okay, that's fine. But ultimately, we argued that we should not get that back tax, that 14 billion euro back tax. We lost.
We argued that,
and we are in this unbelievably advantageous position where we lost and we still get the money, and Apple still thinks we're great for siding with them.
And I would say that what we argued was that we hadn't levied the tax incorrectly. It was more the argument, not that we shouldn't get the money.
Right. But you know what I mean? That is our brand. And so how do we talk? We are not the ones who position ourselves as the ones to talk the truth to big tech companies.
No, but if unless there's a massive power differential in the relationship, and I don't think there is, because those companies need the footprint that they have in Ireland more than we might think they do, and lots of commentators disagree with that view. But I see it in terms of I speak to people who are executives in these tech companies, and they would take the view that Ireland is the place they want to be. It's not about tax. It's not about one thing. I think it's a conglomeration of factors that make this an attractive place for them to be. That being the case, if you are the relevant minister, whether that is finance or media or whatever it is, you can go to these companies and say, look, we have this issue. Let's work it out. And that's the way the relationship should work. Not, we are afraid to say this to you because you give us X amount of tax. That's a totally undesirable and impermissible situation to arise.
Okay, I'm afraid, guys, we're going to have to leave it there. My thanks to Joe Haslam from the IE Business School in Madrid, and also to Barry Ward, Fine Gael TD for Dún Laoghaire. Gav Hennessy was on sound today, and JJ Clark produced this episode. I'm Adrian Weckler, and you've been listening to or watching The Big Tech Show, and we'll talk to you soon.